session today, so be aware that it will be made available afterwards. As we are now at 2 past the hour, we're going to kick things off. I'd like to start off by welcoming everyone to today's webinar, Experience the Benefits of Unified Data with our iPaaS solution, DataBlend. I am Mike Mooney. I handle business development at Carlson Management Consulting, and many of you have received an invitation for me to attend today, and I'd like to thank you for joining. We have a lot of great content today, but before we get things started, I'd like to let everyone know that we will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. If you do have a question during the presentation, please do note that the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom meeting screen. Feel free to enter any and all questions there during the presentation, and both myself and Peter will be certain that they are covered. As I mentioned at the beginning here just a few minutes ago, I want to let everyone know that today's webinar is being recorded. We will be making it available for anyone interested. If you do have colleagues who you think would benefit from the session, please be certain to point them in my direction. My contact information will be available at the end of the webinar today. And as for introductions, today's webinar, we are joined by Peter MacIntyre, our Director of DataBlend, who will be leading the discussion. As I mentioned, I am Mike Mooney. I handle business development at Carlson Management Consulting. I've spent my professional career working with a variety of industries, from financial services, sustainability, and entertainment. In my role at Carlson, I work with my customers to improve existing processes, automate otherwise manual tasks, and integrate multiple systems seamlessly, provide deeper insights into financials, all while maintaining a single source of truth to empower finance teams to actively plan. Peter MacIntyre has been a key member of the Carlson team since 2011. He's a certified adaptive insight consultant, and he heads up our efforts as the director of our iPaaS solution, DataBlend. As director of DataBlend, Peter is responsible for implementations and customer support, as well as product development and internal support. Peter's worked with over 100 successful integration projects, making connections to an extensive list of systems such as Sage Intacct, Adaptive Insights, Salesforce.com, QuickBooks, NetSuite, and many more. Peter works closely with the development team, helping design DataBlend to make it powerful yet easy to use for business users and administrators alike. Peter is also a certified adaptive insights consultant, having worked on more than 75 successful implementations at Carlson. As for our agenda today, we will cover the following: Carlson Management Consulting overview. What is DataBlend? How is DataBlend different? What new releases? What's new in this release? Available connectors, the Carlson ecosystem. You'll note that we eat our own dog food, and the demo of DataBlend, and as I mentioned, a Q&A to follow this session. As we do have a large number of attendees, if in the instance we do not get to your question today, please be sure to let me know, and I'd be happy to schedule a separate time to speak to your specific questions individually. As for Carlson Management Consulting, we were initially founded in 2010. And while we will be focused on DataBlend today, Carlson offers across a multitude of best-in-class cloud financial solutions, including Adaptive Insights for your budgeting, forecasting, and reporting needs, Sage Intacct for enterprise resource planning, as well as Nexonia for timesheet and expense reporting, Avalara, which is a tax automation solution, as well as our outsourced services to organizations of all sizes and industries. Carlson is a 6-time Partner Award winner with Adaptive Insights, most recently earning the recognition of Partner of the Region for the Americas in 2018. We've also been ranked 3 years in a row on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing private companies, as well as 3 years in a row on the Boston Business Journal Fast 50. I only mention these recognitions that they are truly an indication of our customer success, as our reputation is truly determined by each successful implementation. We have 4 offices located in Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, and Ohio, with a team of consultants nationwide. And what separates us from the crowd is that each consultant, much like Peter, comes to the organization with a finance background as well as a deep technological expertise, making Carlson the cloud financial solution expert. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Peter to provide further insight into our iPaaS solution, DataBlend. Take it away, Peter.
All right, thank you, Mike. So I'm going to start today just by giving a background on what is DataBlend. So first of all, as Mike mentioned, DataBlend is an integration platform as a service, or iPaaS system. Basically meaning cloud system that you can log into with a set of credentials, where you can build, edit, and run integration processes. DataBlend has ETL capabilities. Some may be familiar with that term, extract, transform, load. And really within DataBlend, this means you can push and pull data as well as customize that data through transformations in between those connections. DataBlend allows bi-directional data flow between systems. So in the instance of Adaptive Insights, not only can you import data into Adaptive, but you can export data out of it as well. And there are three main connection types that DataBlend utilizes: cloud, on-prem database connections, as well as SFTP connections. Cloud utilizing API calls, database utilizing our data agent install, and SFTP typically for flat file integrations. Now, who uses DataBlend? Currently, we have 125 and growing customers. And companies with multiple systems that are looking for a single integration platform are perfect for DataBlend. At least half of our DataBlend customers are making multiple connections and really rely on it as their central hub for all their data flows. And companies with unique integration requirements fit the bill as well. Traditional integration tools, within an ERP or CRM system may provide only basic functionality, whereas DataBlend offers limitless customization for connections and transformations. So how is DataBlend different? The big one is designed for the business user. We focused on, especially with this last release, we focused on designing DataBlend so it's easy to use for any user to build their own integration workflows. It offers unique capabilities for Adaptive Insights users. As I mentioned before, having the ability to import into Adaptive really from any source system, as well as export data out of Adaptive is pretty key. There's even the ability for structure creation, which can include creating and updating accounts and levels within Adaptive. Ideal for all integration requirements. CRM, ERP are the big ones, but systems such as HR, PSA, and BI, all work with DataBlend just as well. Workflows accommodating complex processes and transformations. I'll demo a little later. There's a new transformations UI, which makes it easy to do things like concatenate and flip signs. But really the transformations are endless through custom scripting. We have the ability to do things like mapping tables, as well as SQL queries for some of those complex groupings and joins. A big one for Adaptive Insights, clean data exports. As Adaptive users may know, the manual Adaptive export sometimes can be hard to manipulate that data once you get it into Excel. With DataBlend, we strive to get that data out without those roll-ups and only levels, so that it's much easier to either import to another tool or use it for reporting purposes. And also the low licensing and implementation cost is another big benefit of DataBlend. So what's new in this release? So the single page application is designed to enhance the user experience. So really, from navigation to workflow creation and execution and status checking, the single page app really is a big release. With workflows, you can now drag and drop to create end-to-end integrations as well as edit them very easily. The workflow drill down now makes it even easier to view status elements. If you're getting warnings or errors in your workflows, you can easily drill down and see what's causing that. The new query builder allows users to select fields to query. So you can pick and choose specific ones from a UI. You can rename fields right from there. You can filter on them, and you can preview data in real time as well, all from one page. We have keyboard shortcuts for power users. So for those who don't like using their mouse at all, you can just use your keyboard to navigate around. Pre-built scripts with import-export functionality. A lot of times there's a need for certain data sources to have a script, and with the ability just to import those, it becomes even easier to use. We now have real-time status updates via a notification pane. And as I mentioned before, we have an expanded set of transformations, including concatenate, fill or remove blanks, flip signs, and a few more that I will show a little later. Some of our most popular connections are what you see here, the big ones obviously being Adaptive Insights, NetSuite, Salesforce, and Sage Intacct, also very popular. QuickBooks, both desktop and online, are big ones, as well as Microsoft Dynamics GP. And just a sample of a few of our other connections, and we even have a bigger list than this, but this is just an example of some of the other systems that we can connect with. So within Carlson, we practice what we preach. We use DataBlend ourselves. You know, Adaptive being our main budgeting and forecasting tool, reporting and dashboard tool. We push and pull data from Salesforce for pipeline management, customer information, Sage Intacct for all our accounting, AR, AP, project billing, and Nixonia for time and expenses. And this graphic really demonstrates not only are we just pushing everything into Adaptive, but we're pushing data from Adaptive, you know, back to Sage Intacct, or Nixonia data into Sage Intacct. And DataBlend really is that central tool that allows all of that to happen. So with all that being said, I'm going to jump to the demo now. And I will just pop over to DataBlend. So what I'll start by showing is, you know, our new interface. So this is the new login screen. So when you first log into the SPA application, this is what you will see. And when I say SPA, I mean single page application, just so that's not confusing for anyone. And all the elements really will be, if you're a current DataBlend user, all the elements will be pretty much the same as you're used to. Obviously, it's just going to look a little bit different. So on the main summary screen, we have a history tab. And really, this shows just a list of the, you know, the last workflows that have ran, when they ran, how long it took, and then the big thing being the status, whether it completed or whether it gave an error or some other sort of message. The next tab provides a list of workflows, which we'll jump into in a little bit. But basically, all your workflows that have been created will be here, and you can scroll through the pages if you have, you know, more than 10 per page. Also, nice feature, you can run your workflows right from here. So if you want to just execute, you know, your Sage Intacct to Adaptive workflow, you can click this icon here and it will execute your workflow right from there. You can also delete or edit workflows from here as well. Last section here is the logs, and this will give a little bit more detail around the history. You can see each workflow that ran and when it ran, as well as being able to click on the line item to see what actually happened in the log. So this will give you a little more detailed list of those processes that occurred within the workflow that you just clicked on. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a transaction drill down capability now. This icon over here on the far right allows you to show a detailed log, which I can click right on. Brings me to a screen that looks like this. I can see in this particular workflow, I have an Excel flat file that I'm pulling in, and then I'm, in this instance, I'm creating intact GL entries from Excel. And you can even drill into each of these items to see a little bit more. Gives you a little snippet of the data that you're pulling in, data that you're pushing out, any requests or responses. And the big thing being this user message. We'll look at some adaptive insights examples in a little bit, but basically this user message is where you will see any of those warnings or errors which provide you details for what needs to be mapped. So if you have any accounts, levels, dimensions that kicked out because they're unmapped, it will show you what exactly those elements were. So I'm just going to jump back to the home screen here. In terms of navigation, there is a menu here that allows you to navigate to the specific sections of DataBlend. You have a data source section that you can view all your data sources in one area. Transformations, things like field mappings, pivot tables, filters, those all will live in this section. Workflows has its own section. It's really a replica of what you see on your summary screen. And then you have the ability to schedule your workflows within the schedule section. The log provides you that log screen as well. Credentials is where you store all your credentials to your various systems. Any scripts that are needed belong here. And then email notifications can be set up typically to go along with a schedule to notify you of integration status. So the navigation pane is pretty similar to the classic DataBlend application. The new navigation, as I was mentioning earlier with the keyboard shortcut, so you can type anything into your browser, and this search bar is gonna show up. And if I just type the word help, it gives you a list of some keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to create a new workflow on the fly, you can just type NW or new workflow, and it's going to bring up the new workflow screen for you. If you want to look at your manage workflows section, you can type MW, will bring you to your manage workflows. Or you can type words. So if I want to see all my Sage intact elements, I can just type the word intact. It will show me everything associated with intact in my instance of DataBlend. So you can see I have a couple different workflows with intact involved, a couple scripts, some credentials, and some data sources. So it just makes navigation a little easier, especially as a lot of elements are going into these integrations. So what I will show now, I'm going to start by showing an example of a workflow. I'll start with this first one, Sage Intact to Adaptive. And I can either click right on this or on the pencil tool, which brings me to the same screen. It allows me to view and edit my workflow. Oh, and I may have timed out there, so I'll just have to log back in quickly. So this is what a completed workflow looks like. So the first thing you may notice is this workflow bar up here with different blocks associated with it. So each block is basically a different process within the workflow needed for the end-to-end integration to work. Basically, you'll start with a workflow description which is what we're showing below here, where basically you can name your workflow, you can store it in specific folders if you want. You have a tab for your logs, so you can view all your logs right from within a workflow as well. And then the schedule and execute tab allows you just to run your workflow right from this section. And I'll just go on down the list of each of the steps in this workflow here. So the next in this list is the Sage Intacct GL detail export. And really what's going on here is based on credentials that have been set up or you set up as you're building this, you have the ability to choose Intacct export and then use our query builder to pull data out of Intacct. So this query builder tab shows you a list of tables and fields that you can choose from. In this particular instance, I've chosen the GL detail table, which then gives me a list of fields within GL detail that I can pick and choose that I want to export. And over on the right-hand side, the display columns and filters area shows me what I've chosen in this case. So really, I've chosen 4 different fields: account number, amount, batch date, and location name. If I ever wanted to add something to this, I can just double-click. If I wanted to add class name, I can just double-click it, and it will add to my display columns over here on the right. And if I scroll down, you'll also notice it adds to this data preview section as well. You can easily remove these also just by editing and deleting. You can even filter on what you're searching for. So if you know a field name but don't want to scroll all the way through to find it, if you know you're looking for a certain date, you can type the word date, and these are all the fields associated with date that you can choose from. Now, once you have all your fields that you want for your integration, you can do some pre-transformation work here. So things like, account number. This is the API name that Sage Intacct is providing me right now. If I want to just change this to be something like account, I can do that. By clicking that pencil button, it brings you to this edit area where I can then click the pencil next to the header name, and I can just change this to say something like account, and then save it. So the API name remains. It'll stay there, so you know what that field was coming from Intacct, but the account is now going to be the header used throughout this integration process since I changed it. You also have the ability from here to filter on items. So you see a couple different plus icons that you can click on. And when you do that, basically you can, within this account field, you can say something like, I only want to pull accounts that are less than 4999 or something like that, which will, only pull, revenue accounts most likely and balance sheet accounts in this case. You can also add another one and say, I want to pull accounts less than 4999 and greater than or equal to 3000, something like that. And then all you would have to do is hit the X, and you can see your rules that you just set up right within the filter section. I'm just going to delete those because I don't want to update this integration that I already have set up too much. Change that back. The big one to filter on is always going to be date. So in this case, the batch date, you can see I'm pulling greater than or equal to January 1st of 2017 and less than or equal to December 31st of 2017. Again, you can click the pencil to edit these dates. So say you want to update this to pull 2018 now, you can just change your year, click X, and then you have updated that time range. So your integration is now going to pull 2018 data and, in this case, import it to Adaptive. Now, the data preview, as you're building data sources, you can click this button, which will then bring back a quick preview of some of the data. So you can see it's showing 1 through 5 of 68 items. The first 5 line items I get look like this. You can scroll through to see, more lists of what you're pulling back. You can sort on any of these columns here. You can also collapse the builder, which gives you a bigger data preview screen. So you can see 25 items instead of 5. And then you can click expand builder just to bring it back to your original view. So that's the query builder. Allows you to easily pick and choose fields, filter on them, do some quick transformations on data right from here, which is nice. The query builder we have not only available for Sage Intacct data sources, but for Salesforce data sources, NetSuite OpenAir, and we're working to have this available for a couple others as well, just to make it easy to build your own workflows and data sources. So the next step in this particular process is a field mapping. And when I click on the field mapping, what this allows you to do is basically align the columns from your data source to your destination. So in this case, my source is Sage Intacct, and here are those 4 columns that I pulled from my query builder. And then my destination in this instance is going to be Adaptive Insights. So for those familiar with Adaptive, a standard import requires account level, split label, and then amounts separated into individual month or date columns. So in order to do that, you basically need to rename your columns to match what Adaptive is expecting. So you can see here what I've done is the account number, I'm tagging that to an account destination. The amount and date I've more or less kept the same, and I'll explain that next with the pivot table. And then my location name, I'm just tagging to level in this case. And then split label, I just want to leave all those fields empty, but it is required by Adaptive. So I need it there. This could be a field from your data source that you want to use as a split label, or you could hard code something in here as well. You could type the word split or something and set that as a custom option, which would then apply to all your data rows. So now part of our new functionality within the field mapping is some of these sub-transformations. And you'll notice a little icon here with a 1 next to it. So on this amount field, if I click on this icon, what I'm doing within the amount is I'm flipping signs. So basically what I'm saying here is I added a conditional that says for any account number less than 5,000, I want to flip the signs on the amount. And this, a lot of times, with an integration, especially into Adaptive Insights, you need to work with positive data in order for the calculations to work properly in Adaptive. So, with GL detail exports, trial balances, things like that, a lot of times the signs just need to be flipped. Typically, it's going to be on revenue, liability, and equity accounts, but I've seen the need to flip signs on really any account, and sometimes not even accounts. Sometimes you need to flip signs based on a different parameter. So this allows you to apply conditionals for that function, and basically this is saying, accounts less than 5,000, flip signs. I could say also, if the location name, which in this case probably would be a string, if that's equal to department 1 or something like that, then flip signs. So you have that functionality. A lot of other options here as well. Flip sign being one. You can also do things like concatenate, fill blanks, remove blanks, replace, and substring. You Concatenate is nice for things like creating levels. You know, with Sage Intacct, a lot of time location and department go together to create level. So you could say, you know, I'm doing this on the amount field, but if this was my location field, I could say, you know, give me the result of my previous transform, and then concatenate that with location name. And then there's a separator here that you can use that could be anything from you know, a character or a free text of some sort. And then you'll notice your a preview of what you're transforming shows up below. So a lot of new functionality here, and we're also going to expand on this even further. You know, we're going to make some of these more or less out-of-the-box transformations even more powerful in future releases. So next I'm going to jump to the pivot table. And really what the pivot table does here is it takes the data from, you know, one date column and one amount column and pivots it so that you get those multiple month columns needed for the adaptive import. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking my date column and I'm grouping it by a date, month, year, which will automatically, you know, in this import, my date range was, you know, the full calendar year of 2017. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to create columns for January through December of 2017 automatically for me, so that adaptive can read it properly when I do my import. And then my other standard columns I need are going to be account level and split label, which I have set up here. And then values, the amounts from my amount column will all get put into those individual month columns that get created on the pivot. So then the very last step here is the actual import to adaptive. And really what you can do is import really anywhere in adaptive. In this case, we're doing a standard data import, but there are options to do model sheet imports, cube sheet imports, transaction details, as well as the standard that we're doing here. You can then choose version name, as well as whether it's plan or actuals. And you have a couple different options for using mappings and pushing actuals ahead for forecast versions. And this is so this is a completed workflow. I also have an Excel file output at the end that kicks out an Excel file that just allows you to see the data in Excel as well, you know, if you ever need that. So I'm just going to jump back to refresh the workflow here without saving those changes I made. Now to run this, all you have to do is just click the execute workflow button. And when you do that, you're going to get a little notification that says workflow executed. You can check your event log to check on status of that as it refreshes. And then, you know, in adaptive, I'm importing to a general ledger version, and here's all my data that you now can see. So it works pretty well. Once everything's set up, you know, you can set this up on a schedule, run it manually. Really, the choice is yours, and you can make edits as needed down the road. So I know we want to save some time for questions, so I'm just going to jump right to the adaptive export functionality, which is another new feature in this new application. So as I was mentioning earlier, you know, exporting data out of adaptive's manual export function can be sometimes hard to use, and then the data you get in the Excel format, you know, sometimes you need to remove columns and you know, get rid of top level and only levels and account rollups and things like that to really format the data you would need. So we take care of all that formatting right within DataBlend. And so I just have a pretty simple workflow set up here where I have an adaptive export data source set up for me. And really to do this, all you need are adaptive credentials. username and password, and then an API version URL, which we provide, and you can actually get from Adaptive's API documentation as well. So the Adaptive export utilizes our query builder as well. Looks a little different than what I just showed with the Sage Intact query builder, just because Adaptive has so much involved with it. So if I jump to the account, so basically you can export data based on any of these elements provided to you. So starting with account, when I click on it, what this gives me down below is a list of all my accounts from Adaptive, all my account types. So from assumptions to cube accounts to custom accounts, modeled metrics, so on. I can really choose anything I want to export here. You know, typically you're probably going to export GL data. So when you click on GL, opens up a new window where you can choose, you know, the accounts you want to export, and you can see in my filter list, I have revenue, cost of goods, and expenses that I'm exporting already. If you wanted to filter on specific accounts, you could do that as well, or you can select, you know, a roll up, and then there's an option for including descendants or not including descendants. You can export attributes as well, account dimension and level attributes, which can be in addition to you know, accounts, levels, and dimensions themselves, or you can use attributes as filters on your export. So if you, in this case, only want to export, you know, accounts tagged with revenue, you can do that. You can just click revenue, and then even though I have everything, I'm choosing accounts that are probably outside of revenue here, it's only going to filter on those revenue ones that I chose. So dimensions, your full dimension list is available to export as well. You can choose total dimension or dimension values to filter, similar to attributes. And then levels, you know, in this case, I'm grabbing top level and everything underneath it. You can choose specific levels as well. And then the last one, version, you can choose more than one version to export. Typically, you're just going to export one version, but you can choose more than one. And then above, you can see I have a time range selected. Obviously, this can be anything that you want to export. And you can preview this data as well, which I'll do real quick here, which gives you, you know, a snippet of what I'm grabbing out of Adaptive with this export. Now this workflow, I'm just kicking this out to an Excel file, but you know, this could, this data could go to something like a SQL database or an FTP server or another cloud system as well. So we're at the 2:40 mark. I know we wanted to save some time for questions. So I'll wrap my piece up now.
And we do have a few questions, Peter.
All right, great. Well,
yeah, so the first one comes through, and it's, does DataBlend offer the opportunity to extract data from a report from the legacy system and move it into Adaptive?
A report from a legacy system. So we do extract reports from certain systems, Workday being an example. Workday and NetSuite, actually, two examples, where we basically, NetSuite saved searches and Workday reports we can pull through API calls, and then those can you know, then be imported into Adaptive.
Excellent. Another question just came through. How about transactional detail?
Transactional detail, yes. So we have the ability to import transactional detail, and really that's you know, a big one that we spend time on. And a lot of times transactions can be the basis for the summary imports as well. You know, transactions can make up those imports. So really, if there's a transaction report or table or whatever it is, that can really be used as the data source for any integration into Adaptive a lot of times. Now, in terms of exporting transactional detail out of Adaptive, that is functionality that is not available through Adaptive's API currently. So if we could do it, we would do it. I just don't believe that's a possibility yet.
Excellent. I also did, just a reminder, I did receive a few private messages. The Q&As, send any questions there, but regardless, one was, is there a limitation to how often our ERP updates our Adaptive instance with DataBlend?
Limitation to ERP updates?
Yeah, I guess, you know, the way I'm reading is you mentioned it's able to do you know, nightly update or you know, monthly. Is there? I guess I would think that
Right.
it can it be more often?
Yeah. So in terms of scheduling, that can be as often as you want to run it. You know, typically our clients run it nightly, but we do have some clients that run it every 15 minutes. So it can be, you know, as often or not as often as you want it to run.
Also got another question. We just acquired another company and have a mix of ERPs. Have you worked with a company with a multitude of ERPs?
Great question. Yes, we have. We have a few clients that use a lot of different systems and a lot of different connection types. You know, we have some that would use QuickBooks Online for, you know, certain companies. SQL database for another company, and flat file integration for other companies, and they all you know, can flow together within DataBlend.
Excellent. I do have one more that came through, and it is in regards to NetSuite. And the question is DataBlend, does DataBlend have the ability to pull over credit card information from NetSuite?
Yes, and that's actually a good question, because credit card information is a limitation of NetSuite's API, especially with it through the transaction type module. Actually 7 transaction types that don't pull through NetSuite's API. So we've actually developed a script that we can load into NetSuite to bypass these limitations. Which allows us through saved searches to pull, you know, the data, including credit card information, as well as things like currency revaluation and a couple others that you can't do otherwise.
Excellent. Well, Peter, those are the questions that I have seen come through so far, and I do see that we're just closing in on the 2:45 mark. I do want to just make sure that anybody and everybody who is attending today that has any questions, you know, you can see on the slide deck, my contact information is below. Please feel free to reach out if you'd like to discuss DataBlend, you know, get a little bit more of a personal demo from Peter, you know, beyond today. You know, don't hesitate to reach out. And also, if you're attending Adaptive Live, would love to have you stop by our booth, say hello, and you know, catch up a little bit further. So thank you everyone for coming today, and we will be distributing this, and please, if there's anyone else that you think could use it, don't hesitate to send them our way. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again.